A huge welcome to Codebar Stories, Kim. Thank you so much for coming along and chatting with us.
Oh, hi Kim. Hi Phoebe. Thanks for having me on board today. Really excited to chat about my career story.
Just want to echo other Kim and say thanks for coming on. I'm going to get very confused today with both Kims, but myself and the listeners will persevere with this. So, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. We know that you're currently away from London, so it's an absolute pleasure that you've made time in your busy schedule to come and speak to us. Now, as I said in the introduction, you first came on Codebar Stories a couple of years ago now because you are, as you said, a long-standing member of Codebar. So could you tell us a bit about when you first joined Codebar, how you heard about Codebar, and all that good stuff that the listeners want to know?
Ooh, it's been a few years now. So I've joined Cobar since 2018, 2019, I'd say. Time definitely flies. And came across Cobar randomly by doing a Google search for coding workshops. And at the time, I didn't really have a lot of money in London. I was working as like a sort of early career sustainability consultant at the time, and I had just like had a few savings here and there. During that time, I was really curious about technology because in the company at the time they were running like an in-house software tool that they were building, and I was brought on board as like a sustainability consultant to help out. So I thought, oh, what do these tech terminologies mean, first of all? And that was how I came across coding and coding workshops. And I was so excited that CodeBar was able to offer free workshops because I wouldn't have been able to attend otherwise. I would dash and run for my full-time job to make an evening workshop in person. Dare I say, I also used it for dinner as well. And it was so fantastic. Like, wrote my first line of code there. Remember the day I came out running for the tube and just had a hop to my step. It was unreal.
We often hear stories like that from people at Codebar, particularly around, their first time. Going back to that first time at Codebar, how did you feel going to your first workshop? Can you remember?
Oh, it takes a lot of courage. I remember
Yeah.
usually when it comes to events and sort of meeting new people and going and trying new things, it always feels a bit daunting at first. So I think when I signed up, I thought, oh, am I gonna look like a fool? Should I bring a friend with me? What am I gonna do? And I remember walking around a building, like circling the building to find the entrance. So I think it was like a big tech company at the time near Piccadilly Circus in London, and I just couldn't find the entrance. And I remember going into the toilets of the building, breathing before I introduced myself. So it's nerve-wracking. But once I overcame the first hurdle, I found that everyone was really welcoming. There were people like me there. And what I mean by that is, it was very diverse and there were so many like mentors there, and I was put at ease immediately. And even though I opened my laptop and couldn't code at the time, I was able to just sit down with a coach, and the coach's role is to sort of like be there on hand to support and to help. And I had all the questions on the planet. Like, what is an object? What is object-oriented programming? What is code? Like, how are you able to change the text in that HTML document? Like, what is going on? And I kept asking questions. So I think the coach by the end of it was so exhausted, but we connected and they shared some really lovely resources for me, and it was fantastic at the end. But the initial hurdle was tough for sure.
Yeah. So for anyone who's maybe listening to this and they are like yourself, like nervous to attend their first workshop or they're apprehensive, what advice would you give to that person?
I think my advice is if you find a workshop online like CodeBar that you really want to attend either in person or virtually, sign up anyway and then put it in your diary. And if you're feeling a little bit scared or apprehensive, you can always ask a friend or join a Slack group and ask someone in the community if they can meet up beforehand with you. for coffee before you enter like the workshop together. So that will help you feel a bit more confident. If you're not so confident joining in person, we have like the virtual workshops that you can attend. So they are very good to be able to get a taster of the workshops, of the talks in the comfort of your pajamas. So you can sit home, have a cup of tea, and relax while dipping your toes into what codebar workshops are about. And then once you've built a bit more confidence, you can then attend in person. So that's my best advice. But back in the day, there wasn't a lot of virtual events. Like, yeah, it was all in person. So it took a lot more effort to go, but I can guarantee you it's absolutely 100% worth it.
And for people that can't see our faces right now, both Kims they work in technology fields, and we'll come on to that. But my background is not technology. I am a lawyer by training. So Kim, your questions are exactly the questions I would have. I would be sat there like, so what is code? Can you explain to me in very simple words what this is? So it's really good that Codebar was able to help you learn and develop that way.
And at the time, I remember that I was juggling my full-time job as well because I just didn't have the financial resources to be able to make that career switch. So Cobar was a bit of a lifeline for the career switch to happen. And I remember even in my role at the time as a business sustainability consultant, all the terminologies that I had learned, like what is an API, what is an FTP, like application programming interface, or file transfer something. See, even I've forgotten now, so I might have to Google it. But it made me gain some confidence. So all the vocabulary that I was using in my day-to-day job, I started to understand the developers that I was working with at the time. And I even begged them if I could sit and watch them fix a bug or or look at a solution to the code. So that really piqued my interest for sure.
Talked about piquing your interest. And I don't know if Kim's ready for this line of questioning. Obviously, we took you to the point at which you first became aware of Codebar. But before Codebar, when you were a kid, when you were 5, what did you want to do when you were older?
Oh, I think on my blog I wanted to be Kim Possible. You know, like the show Kim Possible is I wanted to be a hacker and I wanted to be cool, be like a secret agent. But I think in school, not a lot of girls were coding or doing computery stuff like electronics. I actually popped down electronics as like a GCSE option, but I changed it last minute because none of my friends were in the electronics class. And I think to this very day, I kind of regretted it because it's so cool to just like build things with soldering irons or just sit there all day,
Yeah.
Yeah.
building something cool. And yeah, like I think that was where my interest started. But because of pressures from society on academic subjects, on like math sciences, I think I was pushed more towards those subjects. So at university, I chose to study geography because I thought it's a mix of maths and science and it's an in-between, and I had no idea what I wanted to do in my career. So I did that and left coding or left tech behind. And it was only later on in my career that I realized a lot of technology is embedded in the day-to-day tasks. So even as a business consultant, I would be working on a spreadsheet and I would find it really tedious and boring to copy and paste each line of data. So naturally, because of laziness and because I just wanted to do my job quicker, I found a way that actually on a spreadsheet you can write some code in VBA or Python to be able to manipulate data faster. And I found myself building functions and formulae for other consultants to use. And that's when I realized that actually I had this coding mindset all along, a mindset to solve problems. And even if I didn't have a computer science degree, the behaviors around this I noticed in myself, and I thought my career in tech was over, or the opportunity was over, but the like codebar workshops and sort of initiatives like this has helped me to realize that a traditional path of computer science isn't the only way to get into tech, and for me that's really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to go back to Kim Possible because I can't not mention that, because I also was a huge fan of Kim Possible. My other person that I absolutely loved was the Pink Power Ranger, Kimberly.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yes.
well. I like the Powerpuff Girls as well. I like Buttercup because Buttercup
Yeah,
was like, wanted to break the rules a bit,
yeah,
Yeah, so I really resonated with that character as well.
yeah. So would you say watching Kim Possible be a hacker was when your interest in tech started? Or, you also mentioned at school, like at what point would you say, oh, tech, this is interesting. Like I actually really enjoy this subject.
I would say in school they had like, one computer for the whole class because I went
Yeah,
to a state school in Manchester. So I liked playing games on the computer. And I think that's when I realized that actually this machine has taken in a set of commands that I've written and
yeah,
displayed something fancy. So for me, it was of the pure joy and fun of seeing something happen on a screen.
yeah,
And then I realized there were actually these rope things, which were wires at the back. And then I kind of broke the computer at home. So my parents bought a computer, and I remember putting toothpicks inside where the disk drive would be. And I was interested in breaking things. And I think that was when it started, really. And the dial-up
I
modem
mean,
sounds as well, like a spaceship. It goes like, "Burp,
yeah,
burp, 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 burp." I can't
yeah.
believe I've just done that, but
Or
yeah.
the classic dial-up tone when you wanted internet and it'd be like
Yeah, that one.
now for
Exactly, exactly.
now for listeners of a certain age, we might need to explain what a disk drive and a dial-up modem is.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, um, the C what are CDs? I had to explain CDs. So it's like a physical thing that you pop into this machine and it pops out. You pop this disc in and it looks like a vinyl but smaller. And you click play and then it runs a software program. So for example, nowadays we have Spotify, but imagine if you load Spotify onto this mini vinyl thing and put it into a machine, then it will run Spotify. So it's a similar concept. And a dial-up modem, I don't know how to explain that, but
I would
you would
actually, I was actually going to say, I think I remember it being explained to me as when back in the days when you had like home telephones and you had to take the wire out of the phone and put it in the computer. It was explained to me when I was a kid that that cable connected with the outside world, so you could have phone calls or you could have internet and speak to people on the computer, but you couldn't have both at the same time.
yes.
Whether that's how anyone else would explain it with a tech background, I don't know.
Kim, I love your description of your experience at school in tech because it was actually really similar to mine. Like I went to a state school. I think we had like two computers that were meant to like teach a load of people. And I actually remember that exact feeling that you had of going, I can tell this computer to do some things and it will do it. And my first experience was Flash. So I remember like building these like little animations and shapes in Flash, and then you would add keyframes, and then each keyframe you would move the shape, and then once you press play, you would get this animation. And I describe myself as a very visual developer when I'm developing, which is why I tend to really like front end and CSS. And I remember that feeling of knowing that I'd made that shape move. It just blew my mind. And I was like, I did that. Like I made that shape move. And it was
it's
amazing.
so fun. It's so fun
Yeah,
when you actually see something happen. And I think a lot of people get a spark of interest into computers through games or through
yeah,
visuals. And certainly at my school, in the IT lessons, we learned about like PowerPoint and Microsoft Word, and it was so boring. I'm sorry, teachers. It was really boring. And a lot of us used to just play games in those sessions. And one day, I thought I saw a ghost, but my computer, like the mouse started moving by itself on the screen, and someone typed something, and then someone said, "Oh, I think one of the IT technicians has just remote desktoped into your machine and looked at what you're doing." I'm like, this is strange.
Yeah.
So a lot of us found a way to do that ourselves, and also found a way to hack into the system so we can play video games at school. Also started from a fun place. And yeah, those IT sessions are so fun from then on.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it sounds like you were trying to be Kim Possible, but it sounds like you're already hacking into the school computers and playing games.
I
So I think you're
know.
already Kim Possible.
Yeah. If any school children are listening to this, please don't do that. Like,
I think the computers nowadays would probably they are a lot more advanced than
they are
what we
indeed.
did at school.
Absolutely. They are much more, they're on a different level now. I think a lot of schools have tablets these days, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you know codebar did help you transition into being a developer, but was there any other resources or online resources, in-person resources that you used to help you transition to being a developer? Because this is the main reason why I think we really want to do this podcast, is because everyone's journey is so different, and we strongly believe at codebar that one route isn't just the solution. So we're really intrigued to know that that journey from the moment you said I'm going to be a developer to then becoming a developer, like that journey.
Like it was a long journey that took about 2 years, and the reason was that it was intentional because of my financial situation. Like, I grew up in a low socioeconomic household, so having the financial stability was important to me. So I couldn't afford a 10 grand boot camp for software development. And at the time, the skills boot camp from the government wasn't available. Grants weren't readily available. So I went to CodeBar, but I also looked at free code camp online. So they offer like a free series of courses that I could do on my spare time. I also looked at Code First Girls. I know that Code First Girls do a lot of initiatives that have been really helpful as well, that have been sponsored. And I also took part in a lot of coding events run by Makers and Rails Girls London. So Makers are like a coding boot camp, but they also like run events. So I went to them, and they also had a scholarship on offer. So that was the reason why I went for it. I'm so happy there are many scholarships now, because it means that more people like me could access those opportunities. So having the ecosystem was helpful, so that I could pick and choose what worked for my schedule, what worked for my sort of learning style, and also how I felt like on the day, because some days I just didn't want to go to an event in person. I just wanted to sit and try out a concept or code by myself. And hackathons as well have been fun. So yeah, plenty. There's plenty.
And then from the moment you finished the boot camp, you'd done this 2 years, and then you thought, I'm ready for a job. How did you then approach that situation? Because that's also an incredibly daunting situation to then go, now I want to apply for my first job in tech. How did you approach that situation?
I think I set myself quarterly goals. So every 3 months, I would revisit my goals. And actually, my first option was more of a risk averse option. Again, due to my financial situation at the time, I actually explored whether I could move laterally within the same company, whether I could offer, a skill in programming if they were able to take a junior on to help out the team. But at the time, because the software product was new and they wanted to launch it quickly, they just didn't have the capacity to bring in that junior developer at the time, which made me sort of reassess things. So one of the routes that I thought about, well, definitely was just to go part-time or do part-time masters. Again, I sort of weighed up whether the financial, like borrowing, like the, what is it called? Oh, student finance was worth it, because I had student finance to pay off at the time as well. And I then concluded that going to codebar was a good first step to build up my projects and portfolio. And I applied for scholarship and didn't get it at the time. I felt really sad, actually, like especially with career switches, when you don't land your first opportunity, it can be a setback. And I took like a bit of a break, but then I relaunched myself back because I thought that, oh, I wasn't ready to give up. And at the time, Makers had a series of scholarships available, and I went for it, having had practiced interview skills and feeling a bit more confident in myself. And that helped a lot.
And then I know a couple of years into your career, you you transitioned to become a coach. What was the reasoning behind that?
It was multiple, really, because at the time I jumped into a coaching role a year and a half into my tech career. And I had just landed my first mid-level software engineer role at the time. And I felt a little bit impostery, if I'm not gonna lie. And I felt like, oh, I felt I wasn't ready yet to code at the pace of my peers. And even though I did a good job, I didn't believe it. So I actually took a step back and tried to reassess what sort of tech role would suit me a bit better. And one of the roles that I've really enjoyed is coaching and mentoring in the community. So I thought, oh, a tech coach role would be a great way for me to give back as well as honing my skills. So I took the leap. I joined a company that focused on building programs to get people who've had a career break back into tech. So they might have had a break due to caring responsibilities or health responsibilities. And so I did that, and I didn't realize at the time, but the company set me a really big challenge to build an end-to-end curriculum for Java, software engineering fundamentals, and C# in the space of a few months. And I absolutely loved it. I loved building the curriculum. I loved delivering the curriculum. So I did that for about a year and a half. And I felt after that point that I had solidified a lot of my skills, and all of the worries that I had had during my software engineering role were all sort of debunked, essentially. And what I realized was I had those skills all along. I just didn't have confidence in myself to do it. So I re-entered back into a software engineering role in June 2022, where I have been since, essentially. So I'm working on the fresh pet food industry, and it's been such a joy. And I work on a platform operations team, and yeah, it's been super cool as well to move across different tech stacks. I don't think many people move across stacks. I've moved from C# to Java to a bit of JavaScript, and now Ruby on Rails. So a very diverse stack over the years.
Because as I've said, I'm not with a tech background. So what you're saying is you have a diverse stack, and what that sounds like to me in not techie words is that you can code on a number of different systems. Is that right? And if someone is listening to this and they don't know what system to start with, what would you recommend?
Oh yeah, like I realise I've used a lot of terminologies that I haven't defined. So a stack is like a sandwich, and each company has its own signature sandwich. So, for example, for the bread, they might be building in JavaScript. For the lettuce, they might be using AWS, Amazon Web Services, as the cloud provider. And then for the ham or the jelly, I don't know how you eat your sandwiches, but that could be something like React for the front end. So React is like a framework for building front end web applications as well as mobile applications. So for me, I've moved across different companies that have different flavors. And because of that, I focused a lot on software engineering patterns, and how to think like a sort of software engineer rather than get too focused on the ins and outs of a specific way of doing things. And I am a firm believer that anyone could do that. So there isn't a right way or wrong way to start a tech career. And I think a lot of career switchers are feeling very daunted by the fact that maybe there's not many roles available for a specific coding language. I would say, try and branch out and explore different technology stacks and try and keep an open mind, because what you pick up in a role is super helpful, and which means that you can then jump onto another role and be able to pick that up quickly. Now, I've taken a very generalist path in my career, and I've yet to see how that my tech career pans out. And I know a lot of my friends focus on more specialist paths. So say if you are really set on doing front end engineering, then TypeScript as a programming language or JavaScript seem to be quite popular. But bear in mind that you can use other programming languages to build a full stack application. So in C# you have Blazor for the front end. In Python, you can build a full sort of stack app using Django, for example. So do keep an open mind and focus on what is it that you're trying to build? What company would you like to work for? Because the product is very important to motivating you. And for me, I'm motivated by the product of what I'm trying to build, as well as the way I'm building it. And it means that if a day-to-day doesn't work out, or I'm encountering a really bad bug or bad day, that I'm able to pick myself back up and go, oh, hey, I'm building a software tool for dogs. This is fun, like it's the application of the tech that's important.
I think the sandwich analogy and comparison is one of the best comparisons I've ever heard to someone describing a tech stack, because it is exactly that, all these different components coming together. And I really, like you said, like, who doesn't want to try lots of different sandwiches? With every sandwich that you try,
I'm getting hungry.
you are
You're
more
making me hungry
experienced.
now. Yeah.
And I think that's such a really, really good way of putting it for, like Phoebe said, like anyone who is thinking of, entering tech, and particularly some of this terminology. So before we wrap up, there is another part to Kim that we actually haven't touched on, is Kim, the event organizer, Kim, the community leader. And I know you run a community organization called Curiously Code. Would you be able to tell us more about that, please?
Yeah. So when I moved to Exeter in Devon, I realised there wasn't a place that people could discover code, and it's very underserved in terms of tech opportunities compared to other parts of the UK. So one of the things that I set up alongside my friend Dan is a technical skills community for social mobility and tech, aimed at curious people who want to code, learn, grow, and empower. And the reason that we set that up was we wanted a safe space for anyone to come in and have that like magical moment that we had when we first discovered coding for the first time. And you don't have to be, an aspiring software engineer to benefit from the sort of workshops and the drop-in sessions and talks. Like, tech is part of every role now. So whether people are doing consulting, whether they are an accountant, whether they are working for a library, being able to work with databases and how data is structured, storing data, manipulating data, building software programs is part of the day-to-day now, isn't it? So yeah, it's been going on since September last year, and we've got a coding lounge coming up where people can drop in. So that's happening soon. So yeah, it's super fun so far. Yeah, I have my fingers in many pies. I also do positive psychology coaching, so I've got that up and running as well. So I do strengths coaching for people in technology, mainly to help them feel a little bit more resilience and lean into the confidence on the day to day because I have to admit, some days I hate coding so much. Like some days the code just doesn't work and it's just the worst thing ever. And you just want to turn off the computer and turn it back on again and hope something works. Other days I feel so excited with it. So I definitely have a love-hate relationship with code.
Do you know exactly how I feel about law? I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like coding is a roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster, and I feel sometimes online it can seem like we put it on a pedestal at times. So
Hmm.
So for listeners, whenever you see highlights on LinkedIn or whenever you hear about how good coding is or people sharing their code or lifestyle on a beach, just focus on your learning path because there will be ups and downs. No one will have a perfect day. Focus on your own journey and your goals. And even if they're small, like don't worry, you're making progress.
Yeah, and it touches really nicely on one of your most recent blog posts, which was about resilience. Because I do think to be a developer, and it's probably the same in law, you have to be resilient because there are going to be times when you want to walk out, you want to leave, that code isn't working. And yeah, your last blog post on resilience was hit the nail on the head.
Yes, and as Kim said, we are rapidly running out of time and we do have some more questions to ask you. So maybe we can turn them into some quick fire questions. I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but we'll find out. So as we said, you were on the Codebar Stories blog a couple of years ago. If you could summarize in one sentence, what have you learned in the last 4 years since you were last on the blog?
I've definitely learned that it's possible to change tech stack. It's okay to pick up different programming languages. The most important thing is to focus on what you're trying to build. So for me, mission and purpose is number one. The technology is the tool and how to get there. The second thing that I learned was that it's okay to have down days. Like some days the code isn't going to be perfect, but it's not a reflection of you. So, your ability isn't measured by your code in the day to day. And then lastly, I would say that being able to ask for help is such an important part of a career. So you don't have to suffer alone, join a community, be part of one, lean on other people's strengths, and you will also, make progress along the way as well.
Perfect. And I think our last question to you should be, what can we see from the future of Kim?
I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight.
Okay.
Never mind the future. But I'll
No
give it
worries.
a go. I'll give it a go. So for me, I do have like my 5-year vision, but I kind of chop and change all the time, like night and day. So I tend to focus on a 3-month cycle. So in the future, I'd love to be able to continue with Curiously Code, so be able to mentor and coach and help people in Exeter and Devon access a lot of the and resources that they might not have access to, especially being an underserved county in the UK in terms of technology. I can see myself having a portfolio career, and what that means is I can spend, my week as a software engineer and technologist as like a full-time job, and then I have my side stuff as like a mentor and coach. So I'd love to do more positive psychology coaching in tech, so bringing a lot of these coaching tools into the technology and digital spaces. So tools around building confidence, building resilience, understanding emotions, as well as strengths development. And I'm really passionate about people getting, access to these during their early careers, and whether they're mid or senior as well, is to make sure that anyone can access it, especially for underrepresented groups as well. Certainly for like ethnic minorities like myself, speaking about mental health was not a big thing growing up. So being able to study this at this point in my career, I'd love to be able to give back in some way with coaching sessions and workshops.
Oh, well, I think that is the perfect way to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Kim. We will make sure to add all of the links that Kim's mentioned throughout this podcast, and we'll also make sure to put links of how you can connect with Kim as well. So thank you so much, Kim.
Yes, thank you very much, Kim. We love it when people go on and succeed from codebar. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me today. Yeah, it's been really good fun, and I'm going to go and have some dinner soon.
Do you know what you're going to have? That's the important question.
I don't know. I might go to like the Japanese like food canteen near the Westfield Centre and see what I can find. Maybe some bubble tea. Yeah.
I'm surprised. I thought you were going to say a sandwich, but on that bombshell, we'll have to leave it there.
Okay, bye-bye.